Ava wasn't supposed to be home that early on a Thursday. Her third period biology exam had been unexpectedly canceled after the teacher fell ill, and the school decided to send half the students home to manage staffing. She was glad, honestly. A surprise day off in the middle of the week felt like a small gift, something rare and welcome. She texted her mom to let her know she was coming back early, but there was no reply. Probably still swamped with patients at the dental clinic where she worked. Her mom's silence didn't bother her. What did was the sight that greeted her as she rounded the corner to their backyard. At first, she thought something was wrong. Smoke curled up lazily into the bright sky, soft but unmistakable. Her pace quickened as she slipped off her backpack and dropped it by the back door, opening it quietly. There was no smell of cooking, no barbecue, no garden cleanup. It wasn't yard waste or trimmings. She stepped out and froze. Her stepdad, Rick, stood in front of the fire pit they usually used for marshmallows in summer. But today it wasn't logs or leftover charcoal burning. A shoebox, old and weathered, lay split open on a metal grate, its contents being fed into the fire like kindling. Ava blinked, her eyes catching a familiar image curling into ash. Her father's smile. The edge of his military uniform. His eyes, laughing and kind, warping in the heat as the photo crumpled. No, the word tore out of her like a reflex, not a decision. Her feet moved before her brain could catch up, carrying her toward the flames, instinctively reaching out as if she could reverse what had already turned black. Rick didn't flinch. He looked at her with mild irritation, like she'd interrupted a chore. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice high and cracking. "What the hell are you doing?" He let the last photograph slip from his fingers and watched it catch before turning to her with a shrug. "Time to move on," he said plainly, like he was talking about repainting a room or changing out a couch. "Your mom agrees. We can't live in the past forever." Ava stared at him in disbelief, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it behind her eyes. The words didn't register right away. She looked into the fire again and saw half-melted frames, glass cracked, metal twisted. Her father's handwriting on the back of one photo was still visible for just a second before it vanished into smoke. "You burned his things?" she said, quieter now, almost as if she didn't want to hear her own voice confirm it. Rick sighed. They were just old pictures, and your mom didn't even know where half of them were. "You keep clinging to a ghost. This isn't healthy, Ava." She backed away, trembling. Her throat tightened, but she refused to cry in front of him. Not Rick. Not this man who had married her mother only 2 years ago, who walked into their house like a stranger and slowly tried to rearrange everything. Furniture, rules, emotions. She had tolerated him for her mom's sake. Even smiled in family photos, kept her distance, stayed civil. But this wasn't just about control. This was an attack. She turned and walked quickly back into the house, locking the door behind her. She didn't look to see if he was watching. She didn't care. Upstairs in her room, she shut the door and slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. The silence was deafening. The air smelled faintly of smoke, and her hoodie, her favorite one, the gray one with the soft inner lining her dad gave her before his last deployment, still had the scent of grass from the backyard. She hadn't cried in a long time. She had trained herself to manage her grief like an adult, like her mom did. Bottled it up, smiled through it, channeled it into school and art and being quiet at the right times. But now the grief cracked open again, raw and unprocessed. She bit her lip hard and hugged her knees, blinking furiously. The images, her dad holding her on his shoulders at age 5, his birthday cards written in blocky capital letters, their fishing trip in Oregon, flashed in her mind, only to be followed by visions of those same memories dissolving in flame. She didn't tell her mom when she got home late that evening. Her mom was exhausted, dragging her heels and smelling of antiseptic and latex gloves. She barely looked up when Rick kissed her on the cheek and handed her a plate of microwave lasagna. Ava sat at the table, saying nothing, picking at her food. Rick glanced at her once, his eyes dull and unreadable. Her mom finally asked, "How was school today?" Ava didn't even blink. "Fine. Boring." Rick didn't say a word. That night, While the house quieted and her parents settled into their routine of TV and beer and scrolling through phones on the couch, Ava opened her desk drawer and took out an old composition notebook she hadn't touched since 8th grade. She wrote at the top of a new page, "Everything I remember about Dad." She sat there for hours, writing until her hand ached. His middle name, his favorite snack, the way he always hummed off-key when fixing things, the time he caught a snake with barbecue tongs, how he cried when she broke her arm and still joked about it being her battle scar. Every story she could recall, every phrase he'd ever said that stuck in her mind. She paused and stared at the page. Her breath slowed. He was more than photos. He lived in memory, and memories could be preserved, digitized, stored, recorded, printed, passed on. Rick couldn't erase him completely. Not if she acted fast. She opened her laptop and started combing through her cloud folders, hard drives, and backups. Somewhere, she had saved digital copies. She remembered scanning a few pictures once for a school project. They had to still be somewhere. After an hour, she found a folder titled Dad's Old Stuff. It had just 7 files, but it was something: photos, a scam letter he'd written while deployed, even an old voicemail recording of his corny Thanksgiving message. Ava exhaled and began uploading everything to a new encrypted cloud account. Then she made copies, one to a flash drive, one to Google Drive, and another to a private backup email. This wouldn't bring the burn things back, but it would be the start of something. A record. A legacy that no one could quietly destroy again. Just before midnight, she pulled out a box from her closet and checked the contents. Inside was a stack of birthday cards, pressed flowers, and one worn leather wallet, her dad's. She ran her fingers over the edges and clutched it for a long time. She wouldn't fight Rick with yelling or drama. That's what he'd expect. That's what he'd win at. She'd fight him with truth, with evidence, with memory, with patience, and he wouldn't even see it coming. The next morning, Ava sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pale yellow light creeping through the blinds, trying to decide whether she had the energy to pretend everything was normal again. Her mother had already left for work, and Rick was outside mowing the lawn with the kind of self-satisfied routine that made Ava sick to her stomach. The sound of the mower droned steadily as she pushed around a spoonful of cereal she had no intention of eating. Her father's face kept appearing in her mind, not just in photos now, but full of movement. His sideways grin, the crinkle of his eyes when he laughed, the way he used to toss his keys into the bowl by the door every single evening like clockwork. The sound used to comfort her. Now, the silence that followed his absence felt like it had its own gravity. She needed more. What she had saved digitally was just a fraction of what had once filled drawers, frames, boxes. The photo albums her mom used to keep had been missing for over a year. When she'd asked about them last spring, her mom brushed it off. "I think they're in storage," she'd said vaguely. Rick was doing some reorganizing. Ava hadn't thought anything of it at the time. She was too busy with finals and dealing with her own grief in quiet, acceptable ways that wouldn't upset the delicate balance of the house. But now she realized Rick hadn't just burned the shoebox on a whim. He'd been slowly erasing traces of her dad for months, maybe longer. The little things had added up. The missing photos from the hallway, the box of dog tags no longer on the bookshelf, even the baseball mitt she kept under her bed that had mysteriously disappeared last fall. Back then, she assumed she'd misplaced it. Now she knew better. Her first instinct was to confront her mom. But that thought quickly faded. Her mother was tired all the time, run down, emotionally flat. Ava could see how hard she was trying to keep things peaceful at home. Any mention of her father usually made her mother's face tighten like a balloon about to pop. She wasn't ready to hear what Ava had to say. Not yet. If Ava pushed now, she'd lose the chance to do this right. So she turned inward, just like she'd done last night. She had to find what Rick hadn't touched. After school that day, she headed straight to the attic. The hatch door in the hallway ceiling was dusty, slightly warped. She hadn't been up there since she was 13, when she helped her mom store Christmas decorations. She dragged the step stool out from the laundry closet and pulled the cord. The door creaked open, releasing a smell of insulation, old cardboard, and time. A thin shaft of light barely illuminated the space above. She climbed carefully, feeling the wood groan beneath her weight as she entered the low-ceilinged crawl space. Most of it was clutter, boxes labeled holiday, kitchen, baby stuff. She crawled slowly, her knees pressing into the boards, until she found a box tucked behind a pile of wrapping paper rolls. It had no label, just duct tape sealing it shut. Her heart jumped as she pulled it toward her. Inside was a mix of things, her dad's handwriting on envelopes, old letters, faded maps, a crumpled baseball cap with a Marine insignia, and, wrapped in a thin cloth, a stack of Polaroids. She held her breath and pulled one out. Her father and mother, smiling on a beach. Another, her father holding her as a newborn in the hospital. Another, her parents' wedding, small and simple, in someone's backyard. She hadn't seen these before. Not once. She checked the corners of the box, and near the bottom, beneath a rolled-up flag, she found a flash drive. It was scratched, its label peeled, but it looked like it still worked. She clutched it in her hand and slowly climbed back down. Back in her room, she locked the door and plugged it in her laptop. The folders were sparse, but gold. Images, video clips, scanned letters. One short clip made her chest tighten, a selfie video of her dad, in uniform, standing in a dusty tent. "Hey, baby girl," he said, a little awkwardly, blinking at the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I'm either on a plane home or you're being nosy. Either way, I love you. Tell your mom I miss her too. And tell Peanut I haven't forgotten our rematch in Mario Kart." Ava pressed her palm over her mouth, trying not to cry. That video alone was more precious than anything Rick could ever touch. She backed everything up twice. She created a hidden folder on her school drive and another one linked to a private, encrypted email she had created under a fake name. She wasn't paranoid. She was just learning how far Rick would go when no one was watching. Over the next week, Ava became a quiet observer in her own house. She stopped reacting to Rick's comments, stopped pushing back. She let him think she was numb, defeated, exactly how he wanted her. In the meantime, she watched him more closely than ever. He was meticulous in his own twisted way. He kept drawers locked in the study. He carried his laptop with him like it was gold. And once, when Ava walked into the garage while he was organizing a shelf, he jumped as if she had caught him doing something wrong. She pretended not to notice. But later, she went back. On his workbench, wedged between an old drill and a stack of zip ties, she found a receipt. A rental slip for a storage unit 20 minutes outside of town. Paid in advance for the next 6 months. Her pulse spiked. She wasn't sure what she was expecting. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was yard equipment. But the receipt was recent, and the address wasn't familiar. Rick hadn't mentioned storage to her mom, at least not that she'd heard. The slip had his name on it, clearly printed. She took a picture of it and sent it to her email account. That night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she told her mom she was staying after school for group project work. It wasn't a lie. They had a project due, but she had no intention of staying on campus. Instead, she texted Leo. Leo was the only person she trusted. He'd known her since 5th grade and had stuck around through everything. Her dad's death, the funeral, the awkward transition with Rick moving in, the days she didn't talk to anyone. He was the one person who didn't pity her or try to fix her grief. He just existed beside it, like a steady branch in water. "I need your help," she texted. "Storage unit visit. Potential dad stuff." He responded instantly. "Say when." By 3 that afternoon, they were parked outside the small facility just off the highway. The place was quiet, rows of metal doors, cameras on every corner. Ava walked to the front office with Leo trailing behind, trying to look casual. "Hi," she said to the bored-looking clerk behind the counter. "I think my stepdad left something in our unit, but I don't remember which one it is." "Rick Sanders?" The clerk barely glanced up. "Just a sec." He typed something in. "Yep. Unit 117. You have access?" Ava smiled and nodded. "I'm on the account. Forgot the number." The clerk buzzed the gate open without another word. Inside, Unit 117 wasn't locked with a digital code. Just a basic padlock. Leo took one look at it and whispered, "I can pick that." Ava blinked. "Seriously?" He shrugged. Scout camp was weird. 2 minutes later, the lock clicked open. What they found inside made Ava feel like her knees were melting. Crates. 4 of them, each filled with items she recognized: her dad's medals, his framed diploma, the folded American flag from his funeral, a photo album, 2 leather-bound journals, even his toolbox with his initials etched into the side. Rick hadn't destroyed everything. He'd hidden it. Ava's hands shook as she lifted the journals. She opened one at random. Her dad's handwriting, sharp and tidy, covered the pages in blue ink. Notes from deployment, letters he never sent, musings about life, her mother, memories trapped in time. She snapped pictures of everything, not touching too much, afraid to make it obvious someone had been there. Leo helped her document it all in under 20 minutes. As they stepped out, a man from the next unit glanced at them and said, "Rick, your dad?" Ava hesitated, then smiled thinly. "Stepdad." He nodded and went back to his business. Back in the car, Ava stared straight ahead as Leo pulled onto the road. He tried to erase him, she whispered, but he couldn't. He hit him instead. Leo didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Ava knew what came next. It was time to show her mother everything. But she had to do it carefully, calmly, privately, and with the full truth in her hands. She had no intention of losing this battle. Not when her father's memory was finally fighting back through her. The house felt different after that trip to the storage unit. Ava couldn't quite explain it, but something in her had shifted. Before, she had been operating from a place of pain and confusion, moving blindly through grief and anger. Now, she had a clear direction. Proof. And not just of Rick's behavior, but of her father's life. His words, his objects, his legacy. These things mattered, and they existed beyond fire, beyond silence. She wasn't just clinging to memories anymore. She was holding on to something real. That night, after her mom had fallen asleep on the couch again, exhausted from another late shift, Ava sat at the kitchen table and began assembling everything. She printed out the photos from the storage unit, copied key pages from her dad's journals, printed the receipt from the storage rental, and even wrote out a timeline. What Rick had removed, when she had noticed it missing, and where she had found it again. She created a binder, labeling every section. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even about revenge. It was clarity. She wanted her mom to see things the way she now did, with open eyes, not fogged over by exhaustion and years of emotional compromise. But she wasn't ready to give it to her yet. Something still felt unstable. Her mom was tired, distracted, and too accustomed to Rick's weird little habits. Ava needed to time this right. She had one shot at getting her mother to believe her. And before she pulled the trigger, she needed just one more piece. She had noticed something recently. Every time she mentioned her dad's name in passing, Rick would change the subject. Not in an obvious way. It was subtle, a look, a shift, a well-timed interruption. It started to bother her more after discovering the storage unit. If he truly believed it was time to move on, why hadn't he just thrown everything out like he did with the shoebox? Why hide the rest? That question festered in her mind all weekend. By Monday, she decided to find out. After school, Ava stopped by the front office at the storage facility again. The same clerk was on shift. "Hey," she said casually, "we just needed to double-check the payment history for our unit. My stepdad said he might have overpaid." The clerk was half bored, but typed it in anyway. Name? Rick Sanders. He pulled up the account. Paid last month. Auto payments on. Goes back 7 months. Ava tilted her head. "Do you know when he first rented it?" The man scrolled. "Looks like October. Last year. October." Her stomach sank. That was right around the time her mom started asking less about her dad. Around when the dog tags had vanished from the bookshelf. The house had begun to look colder. She thought it was grief mutating into distance. But maybe Rick had planned all of it. A slow, quiet erasure. Not all at once. Just piece by piece. She thanked the clerk and left, her fists clenched in her hoodie pockets the entire walk home. In her room, she opened her dad's journals again and began reading more thoroughly. Her heart ached with every word. He wrote about how much he missed her, how proud he was of her grades, how excited he was to come home and take her to see the new Marvel movie. Then something caught her attention. A short entry, written just before he deployed for the final time. "Gave L the box. Told her to only open it if something happens to me. Don't want Ava to see the hard stuff too soon. When the time's right, she'll need it more than anyone else. Ed, there weren't many L's in her parents' lives. Her mom's friend Lisa, maybe? Or Lorraine, her dad's cousin in Phoenix? Her fingers itched to text anyone for clues. But she knew if she started asking questions too loudly, Rick might catch on. She had to move more carefully. She messaged her cousin on her dad's side, Angela, who was in college now. They weren't close, but they had met at the funeral and kept in touch once in a while. Hey, weird question. Do you know someone named Lorraine that Dad was close to? Angela replied 10 minutes later. Yeah, cousin Lorraine. Used to live in Phoenix, but moved back to Colorado Springs after her divorce. Why? He mentioned her in one of his journals. Said he gave her a box in case anything happened to him. Angela didn't reply immediately. When she did, her message made Ava sit upright. I remember that. Mom said he called Lorraine a few weeks before his last deployment and mailed her something. We thought it was papers for VA stuff. I can DM your number. Ava nearly dropped her phone. She thanked Angela and stared at the number for a while before finally calling. Her hand trembled. A woman answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. Hello. Hi, is this Lorraine? My name is Ava. Ava Sanders. A pause. Ava? Oh my God. You've grown so much. I remember when you were, 7? At the base picnic? Ava smiled faintly. Yeah, I was going through some of Dad's old things, and I saw in his journal that he left something with you. A box? He said you'd know when the time was right. There was a long silence. Then a sigh. I was wondering when this call would come. Yes, I have it. It's in my closet. I've kept it safe just like he asked. I wasn't sure if your mom... Well, never mind. Do you want me to mail it? Please. She gave her the address, and Lorraine promised it would go out the next morning via tracked shipping. When the package arrived 3 days later, Ava signed for it and carried it into her room like it was made of glass. It was smaller than she expected, a metal lockbox with a key taped to the side. She sat on her bed and opened it slowly. Inside were 3 things. First, a handwritten letter from her dad, dated a week before he deployed. Second, a flash drive. Third, a legal folder marked last with family instruction. Ava's heart thundered. She picked up the letter first. It was written in her father's neat, square handwriting. Ava, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. I don't want this box to make you sad. I wanted to make you stronger. Inside are things I didn't want to burden your mom with while she was grieving. But you deserve to know who I was, all of me, and who I wanted to be for you. I love you endlessly. Never forget that. The letter went on to explain the documents and flash drive. The drive included videos, more messages from him, a backup of financial records, and letters to Ava and her mother about how to handle their lives after he was gone. But most importantly, the folder contained instructions for distributing his belongings. And in bold, underlined ink, it stated clearly, do not dispose of or hide any of my personal items without Ava's consent. My daughter has the right to access and keep anything that belonged to me. She is the memory bearer. Do not erase me. Ava felt cold all over. Her father had seen it coming. Not Rick, maybe, but the possibility that someone might try to erase him, move on too fast, forget. He had known how easy it would be to vanish. She made 3 copies of everything. Then she took the original letter and the printed will and placed them into the binder she had prepared. She included photos from the storage unit, a transcript of her call with Lorraine, even a copy of the flash drive's contents. She didn't just want to tell her mom the truth. She wanted her mom to hold it in her hands. That night, while her mother sat quietly on the couch with a heating pad across her shoulders and a tired expression on her face, Ava approached her. I need you to read something, she said gently, handing over the binder. Please do it when Rick isn't here. Just when you're alone. It's important. Her mom frowned, confused but nodded. Ava didn't press. She just walked to her room, closed the door behind her, and waited. Tomorrow, everything would start to change, whether Rick was ready or not. The house was unusually quiet the next morning. Rick had left early for work, and Ava's mom hadn't come out of her bedroom since Ava handed her the binder the night before. For once, Ava didn't wake up with that familiar tightness in her chest, the one that came from pretending everything was fine while feeling like she was slowly disappearing in her own home. Today felt different. Tense, yes, but also like the beginning of something. Something honest. She didn't go to school that morning. She told her mom she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't far from the truth. Her stomach was a knot of nerves, her head pounding lightly from a night spent barely sleeping, waiting, wondering. She half expected her mother to confront her right away, to call her into the bedroom and ask for an explanation, or even dismiss everything with a tired wave of the hand. But instead, the bedroom door stayed closed. By noon, the door finally opened. Ava sat at the kitchen table, cradling a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her mom stood in the hallway, holding the binder in one hand and her phone in the other. Her eyes were red, her mouth open like she was going to say something, but no words came. She walked to the table and sat across from Ava, setting the binder down slowly, her fingers lingering on the cover as if it weighed more than it physically did. "I read it all," she said softly. Her voice cracked on the last word. Ava said nothing. She didn't trust herself to speak yet. Her mother looked up, her face pale and bare. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't know how," Ava answered. "You seem so tired all the time. And Rick, he made it feel like talking about Dad was wrong. Like we were broken from missing him." Her mom swallowed hard and nodded. "I guess I let that happen." The silence that followed was thick with 1,000 unsaid things. Then she reached out and held Ava's hand across the table. It was the first time in months they had touched like that. The contact alone made Ava's throat tighten. "I didn't know about the storage unit," her mom said. "I didn't know he burned those photos. He told me they'd been damaged. Mold. Said he had to throw them out." Ava's grip on the mug tightened, her knuckles white. "He lied. I know." Her mother looked so small in that moment. Not weak, just human. Ava saw, for the first time, the extent of her mother's grief, the way it had wrapped itself around her and blinded her. And maybe that was what hurt most of all. Not that Rick had lied or manipulated, but that her mother had been too broken to see it. "I thought," her mom said slowly, "that starting over would help me breathe again. But it didn't. It just made me numb." Ava nodded. That's what he wanted. Her mother shook her head, more to herself than to Ava. "No, that's what I allowed. He didn't force this on me. I gave him the space to do it. I stopped asking questions because the answers hurt." They sat in silence again. Then Ava reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out the original letter from her father, the one she hadn't included in the binder. She handed it to her mom, who unfolded it slowly and began to read. As her eyes moved across the page, tears spilled down her cheeks. This time, she didn't wipe them away. She let them fall. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and placed it in her lap. "Your dad always worried I'd forget him," she said. "But I didn't. I just try to keep living without falling apart." "I know," Ava whispered, "but I need to remember him. I need you to remember him with me." "I will." It wasn't a grand, emotional declaration, but it was real. That mattered more. The rest of the day unfolded slowly. Her mother went into her bedroom and pulled out a small jewelry box that Ava hadn't seen in years. Inside were 2 of her dad's wedding rings, one gold, one silver, and a press photo booth strip from their first date. She handed it to Ava without a word. Then she began to clean. By the time Rick came home at 6, the house was still quiet, but not in the usual, stifling way. The lights were dimmed, dinner was cold on the counter, and Ava's mother was waiting at the table with the binder open in front of her. Rick walked in, tossed his keys into the dish, and froze when he saw the look on her face. "What's going on?" he asked carefully. She didn't answer right away, just gestured to the chair across from her. "Seat." He hesitated, then obeyed. She slid the binder toward him. "Start reading." Rick flipped through a few pages, then scoffed. "Are you kidding me? This again?" Ava's little drama. "No," her mom said sharply. "Not her drama. Her truth. And mine." Rick frowned. "This is ridiculous. Those things didn't belong to her." "They did," her mom interrupted. "And you had no right to take them, hide them, or burn them. You manipulated both of us. You tried to erase a man who meant everything to this family. And you did it while pretending to care. I was trying to help you move on." "Help?" Her voice cracked. "You moved things without asking. You lied to me about Mold. You hid his belongings in a storage unit I never knew existed. You gaslit my daughter, and made her feel like grief was shameful. That's not help. That's control. Rick stood up, voice rising. You're being emotional. This is all just... Stop. The word hit the air like a hammer. Her mom stood, meeting his eyes without fear. I want you to leave. Rick blinked. What? You heard me. I want you out. Tonight. You're overreacting. We need to talk about this like... I said leave. He stared at her, like he expected her to back down, like she always did when he raised his voice. But she didn't. And for the first time since Ava had known him, Rick looked unsure. He opened his mouth again, then closed it. Without another word, he turned, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was clean, a silence that felt like air after a storm. Ava watched her mom sit back down, trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. For what? For not seeing it sooner. For not protecting you better. For letting myself forget who your father really was. You didn't forget, Ava said softly. You just needed a reminder. Her mom nodded slowly. And you gave it to me. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Rick called several times, first with apologies, then with anger, then silence. Her mother filed to terminate the lease on the storage unit. She asked Ava to go with her to therapy. They started to rebuild, not just their memories, but their relationship. Ava printed out more photos from her digital backups and created a wall in her bedroom. Her dad's medals hung beside them. His journal stayed on her nightstand. And sometimes at night, she'd play the video messages again, not to cry, but to feel grounded. They weren't moving on. They were moving forward, with him still in their story. And that made all the difference.